7 p.m. and we call this meeting to order. Good evening. It is 7 p.m. My name is Vangela Barnes, and we call this meeting to order on July 14, 2025 for our monthly Canal Winchester Board of Education meeting. Can we please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes.
Present.
Mr. George.
Here.
Ms. Green.
Here.
Mrs. Talley.
Here.
Mr. Twist.
Thank you. Can we please stand and say our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any deletions or additions to the agenda?
Nope.
That's it. We'll do a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Take a roll call, please.
Mrs. Talley.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Ms. Barnes.
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is our presentations, and the first presentation we have is our Honorable Senator Michelle Reynolds will be providing a presentation today.
Is it okay to stand here? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, board members. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I wanted to stop by. I'm actually doing rounds, and by doing rounds, what I mean is I'm going to our local city council meetings, school board meetings, and township meetings to stop by and give legislative updates. So I wanted to be able to do that today. Currently, the General Assembly is on recess, and so during our break, we're able to get more into the district. So I wanted to come by and talk about a couple of things that we are working on at the state. I also want to talk about the state budget because I'm sure there's a lot of questions about that, specifically as it relates to property taxes and school funding. So first, I want to just share that as far as the school funding highlights, the state formula aid for education was increased by $1.4 billion, including all the scholarships, and that is a 6.2% increase over the FY 24-25 biennium for a total investment of $23.87 billion. Of that increase, the budget provides nearly $1 billion in state formula aid to public schools. Compared to the current FY 24-25 biennium, that's a 4.7% increase. I just want to point out that this also includes traditional districts, community STEM, and JVSDs. This is in addition to the $1.2 billion and $2.31 billion increases provided in the last two budgets. So in total, over the past 6 years, the state has invested $59.93 billion in our public schools. The budget this year completes the phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan at the full guarantee, ensuring that no district receives less state aid than it received in FY21, without capping any increase in formula aid for the districts. So, depending on who you ask, the question is the state funding at the Fair School Funding formula? If you are adding from a 2025 number, then the answer would be no. If you are adding from the FY21 number, which is pre-COVID, the answer is yes, and that's when the guarantee was put in place. So that's why there's discrepancy when you hear people talking about fully funding our schools at the Fair School Funding formula. The reason that there's discourse about that is because we're not necessarily adding from the same point. And I just wanted to make that clear. I know that the issues are not as simple as the talking points. A lot of times, we're hearing people say, well, we should just take money from this and give money to that. It isn't that simple. As your treasurer knows, school funding formula is very, very complicated. It's very complex, and it includes a lot of different metrics, and one of those metrics is property taxes. And right now, property taxes is one of the biggest issues that we are facing in the state. We get emails and calls all the time, not just for school funding, but we also get it for property taxes. At the end of the day, people are very upset that their property taxes have gone up 30 and some 40%. And we in Canal Winchester are in a very high growth district area, as you all know. Everything is, the market for housing is very, very, the demand for housing is very great, but there's, very high interest rates, and that is causing an influctuation in our property taxes. So what are we going to do about it? We as elected officials, especially at the State House, were voted in because, we have to represent the interests of all of the residents. And so obviously that is a big job. And we cannot ignore when people call us and say that what are we going to do about their property taxes. So over the last year, the General Assembly has created certain proposals, some good, some bad, some, whatever, what you want to say, but trying to at least tackle that problem. And one thing that we know, and I want to make clear, is that if we don't address it, the voters will. They've already talked about a ballot initiative that is going to be coming out in FY26 on the ballot that is going to hopefully they do not prevail, but they want to eliminate property taxes. And we all know that would be devastating for our schools. It would be devastating. If the way schools are funded is partially through our property taxes. So if we eliminate property taxes, it would devastate school funding. So that tells us that we have to do something that is, it impacts our property taxes in a way where people feel like they have some relief, but we also balance being able to fund our schools. The answer is not to do nothing. And I know that I've encountered many people who, are very passionate about education, as I am, and their response is, don't touch our schools, find the money somewhere else. But unless we change the formula, it just doesn't happen. The formula actually has property taxes as part of the formula, so we have to do something. And what I'm here to do is to just, communicate that we would really like our school system, our school boards, especially in my Senate district, to be part of that solution. I'm inviting you to be part of the solution and not the problem, because at the end of the day, if we do nothing, the voters will do it, and then the schools are going to be looking at us saying, how are you going to fund our schools? The only way we could fund our schools then would be sales taxes, which would rise to about 20%, which means that nobody would be buying anything in Ohio. They would be going to our border states and border cities, or border states, to buy products outside of Ohio, which would trash our economy. And also, it would increase our income taxes. As you know, in this budget, we did decrease the income tax brackets to 2.75%, a flat tax. Say what you will. Some people would say, well, the richer aren't paying their fair share. However, it is equitable that no matter what you make, now if you make $26,000 or under, you don't pay taxes anyway, income taxes. But if it is over $26,000, everybody pays 2.75%. So if we do nothing, we have to look at those two metrics as going up, and that is not something that we should do. If you ask the average taxpayer, the average homeowner, someone that may not be as savvy about school funding and property taxes, if you ask the average Joe citizen, would you like to eliminate their property taxes, the polls say yes. And that is not good. There are petitions going around, and they're asking people, wouldn't it be a good idea to eliminate property taxes? Well, yeah, because my property tax bill is 30 or 40% higher than it was. That is not a good thing. So having said that, the legislature is in a posture where it has to do something. Now, as you can tell in the media, we've had the House of Representatives have come up with a plan on their version of how do we fund schools and make sure that we give property tax relief to our citizens. The House plan was to cap carryover, and the carryover plan that they had was 30%. And then we, in the Senate, had a counter proposal, and our counter proposal was to cap it at 50%, but also, though, allow there to be a capital account where you could still save money, a school board could still save money or a district could still save money for capital improvements and any other improvements that you need for your school to make sure that you're fiscally responsible. We do not want to necessarily send the message out that if a school is saving money for a rainy day or for their bond rating or to make sure that they are saving money for the expansion of their school, that they're doing a bad thing. That is not the case here. That is not the message we're trying to send. Yet in doing so, there are some schools and a lot of suburban schools that are sitting on carryover at 100% and some 250%. And that makes our taxpayers say, what the heck is going on? Why do you have all that money, but you come to the state saying that you need more money, you want fully funded, because that was the commitment that we made, and that is true, but our teachers, are our teachers getting that money, where the money really should be going to educate our students? It begs the question, and so when you are in an elected capacity, like you all are, you have to be good stewards of the public's money, and you have to make sure that you're transparent. So we started asking those questions. We started looking, through ledgers and spreadsheets and seeing that there's a whole lot of cash that people are sitting on. And it's not every school. It's not every school, but there are some schools that are doing that. And so in our role, it was a way to say, okay, since the formula connects the two, which I don't necessarily agree with, because I feel like we pit our families against our seniors, because seniors would love to vote for your levies, but they just can't afford to. So the way the formula currently is it puts it together, and that's why levies fail. So we came together in conference committee, and 30% was just too lean, 50% was, I guess, too much, and so we came up with a 40% carryover cap with the inclusion of being able to have an account for capital expenditures that you're trying to save for. As you know, it passed, but then it went to the governor, and the governor then vetoed it along with 67 other provisions that he vetoed. So what does that mean? It means a couple of things. As it relates to the cash carryover, that is not necessarily back on the table. So I know that you've heard that they've called the House members back to look at overriding the governor's veto. There are a couple of items that they're looking to do. The cash carryover is not one of them. That is not on the table, at least at this point. What is on the table as it relates to property taxes, and this is really about a property tax conversation at this point. What is on the table for property taxes is to empower the local budget commission, who has the authority. We're trying to give them the authority in their local community to be able to make decisions to have even further property tax relief. So that means we can give it at the state level, but then we can empower our budget commissions, our local auditors, county auditors, to say, in this community, we want to make sure that we give additional relief, and they can do that. So that's on the table to be able to override the governor's veto there. Also is the millage. It is making sure that the 20 mil floor stays a 20 mil floor, because currently, and Canal is not at the 20 mil floor, but there are some schools that are at the 20 mil floor, but because of inflation, they're still able to collect beyond the 20 mils. And we want to make sure that that does not happen. So it would be a 20 mil floor that would be set, and once you're there, you're there. Also, the other thing is about levies. And this is about making sure that levies are very transparent, because a lot of times taxpayers are saying, well, the schools are coming to us saying that they're going to have an emergency levy. And they say it's not going to raise your property taxes. And then the next thing you know, it raises their property taxes, and they don't understand the difference between the levies. So this is to make sure that if there is a levy, the emergency levies actually go away. If there's a levy, it's very transparent, and the county budget commission actually has the authority to, help craft what that levy is about, what it looks like, and all of those things. So I know that's not great news, but at the end of the day, we have to do something about it or the voters will, and it will put us in a worse position than what we are now. I want to thank both of you for coming to a meeting with me and asking about why Canal Winchester is losing money, even though we're fully funding the schools. Why is it that there is a discrepancy specifically for this school district? I think at first it was a tune of like $2 million, but I think it's a little less than that now. But I wanted to share with you, and you can tell me if that's the case. I think it's a little over $1 million now.
I thought it was 2.5.
It was
600 in year
original.
1 and 1.7 in year 2.
Okay. So let me give you, because I did do some research about that, and I asked our school policy advisors, and this is what I was told. So I'm going to read this, and then, of course, we can open up for some questions. So the question specifically is why is Canal Winchester receiving less in the budget bill? And it appears that it is likely due to a big fluctuation in students who are eligible for the Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid, the DPIA. In October of 23-24 school year, the Biden administration expanded the community eligibility provision for free and reduced lunches to permit schools that had at least 25% of their students eligible to expand to all students, and feds would help pay for it. DPIA eligibility is based on the number of students eligible for free and reduced lunch. The Department of Education and Workforce started counting for DPIA any student eligible for free and reduced lunch, even if the student was only eligible under the community eligibility provision. Not that the student qualified based on being eligible for SNAP, Medicaid, or TANF. So Canal Winchester's percentage of students eligible for DPIA grew from 44.94% in FY24 to 99.17% in FY25. You all received a huge increase between 24 and 25 of almost 50%. And House Bill 96 phases down the amount that that district will receive for students whose DPIA eligibility is truly from being eligible for SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF, not from what the feds had said originally that you could count everybody. And so now that is actually factoring that in, and that is why you're seeing a difference in your what you're getting in the budget bill. That's what I wanted to come back and share with you guys about that. So before I open for questions, I also wanted to just share that tomorrow I'm hosting another town hall meeting. It's a teletown hall. I mainly do that because I represent 3 counties. My district is almost 400,000 people. I represent 3 counties, which is Franklin, Madison, and Pickaway. And I am going to have all of the county auditors from all 3 counties on the call tomorrow to talk about property taxes, and we're also going to talk about housing. So anybody is welcome to come. We have some flyers out there on the table. All you need to do is register for that by sending an email to my office, and we will make sure that you get the registration link to register for that and be able to submit any questions that you have. I'll also be co-hosting this with one of the House members, Adam Matthews. He is a state representative representing Ohio House District 56. He also does a lot on housing policy. So we want to be able to address this, and it's really timely. I mean, this was something that I said I was going to do when I did the one for education, but now it's a really timely conversation because we're talking about property taxes. Maybe it being veto override. We're not sure if there's going to be the votes in the House. I'm not sure. So I don't know if the Senate is going to be coming back or not. But on the 21st, which I believe is next Monday, the House is meeting, and we'll see what happens. And with that, I'm happy to open for any questions you may have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Reynolds, for being here and sharing that information. In your presentation, you mentioned that you would like for the state, the lawmakers and school board members to work together towards a solution. What do you see that looking like?
So for me specifically, I would like any feedback on what the school, because I believe those that are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I think a solution is, here's a viable option. Not just talking points, not just take money from the stadium and give to the schools. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about treasurers maybe coming together, people that understand these issues. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation, let's around some proposals that may help. Because I think that if we get the schools in part of the solution now, then we can actually stop a train wreck from happening in 2026. But the feedback I've gotten from the schools, really, I mean, as I'm going here, is just don't touch it, and we'll just see what happens. And I don't think that that is wise, and nor is that something that the property tax and homeowners want to hear. So that's what I'm talking about, is really sitting down and being results-oriented, because, you know, our treasurers are close to this. Like, they understand the numbers. I'm a layperson. I'm not even on the education committee anymore. I used to be, but we get consultants that come in and talk to us and try to help us unpack to the best of our ability. So even what I'm delivering right now, I'm not an expert at this, but it's something that I'm trying to understand so that I can make sure that I share that information with people who do this work. So thank you for your question.
Certainly, and I do agree. I hope that we all can come together and have a meaningful conversation. With the backdrop of the Fair School Funding Plan, it's just kind of disappointing to me that it seems that there's just differing, perspectives as far as what viewpoint you're coming from. And I understand the way that you presented it as far as highlighting the increases that schools are getting. However, realistically, there's, under the current state budget, there would be a $2.86 billion shortfall that schools are receiving. And due to one of the changes you mentioned was the DPIA, that's been reconfigured, and it affects districts with low-income students. The other portion that it disadvantagedly affect would be it eliminates the supplemental targeted assistance. So that also affects districts with low wealth. And it seems that the state has been reallocating resources towards districts that are more wealthy, as opposed to providing the needed assistance to the school districts of more impoverished students. So that's what's unsettling for me.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that's a valid point. I mean, I appreciate you sharing it. From what I'm getting on, from the legislature is, never in history have we funded the schools more than we are now. I would venture to say that it would never be enough, to be honest. I mean, there's always going to be students who have very critical needs, and I think that we have to come together as a community and figure out what is it that we can do with the resources that we have to try to do the best that we can. Because I think even with what you said, I think it would even be that much more devastating if we have no property tax. I mean, we eliminate property taxes. Now we're having a whole different conversation. Now we're having a conversation about, can we find money at all for the schools? So I truly do appreciate that, and I'm willing to listen. That's what I'm here to do, is share and listen so that we can make some better decisions. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
And kind of along with Board Member Talley. So her number, 2.86 billion, underfunded, that comes from policy matters. And I think that, depending on who you talk to and which organization it is, they're going to come up with a different number. I guess my main concern, you had mentioned that this plan implements the fair school funding fully, but it doesn't really. It implements the fair school funding when it was initiated back in '21. So with base cost inputs from '22, and since then, we've had inflation of 10%. So inflation affects school districts just like it affects you and I shopping at the grocery store. It also, you gave no updates of the weights and costs of special education, English language learners. Both of those were required in the fair school funding plan. So, and as Board Member Talley mentioned, it seems like it's hitting economically disadvantaged districts significantly. On your website, michellereynolds.org, you espouse 10 commitments, and one of them is improving Ohio's K-12 education system. So your yes vote on this budget, I'd like to understand how your yes vote aligns with that commitment when the school districts in your district are taking probably somewhere in the vicinity of a 4 to 5 million overall funding cut.
So, as with any budget, I don't know if you all vote on your budget, I would suspect that you do. It's an up or down vote. It's, you don't get to pick and choose what you're voting for. You're either voting for the budget or you're not voting for the budget. And there was a lot of good things that came out of the budget. I didn't vote to screw our school districts or our children or our families. As I said, we are funding schools more now than we have in Ohio history. And I understand that. And I do believe that depending on who you ask, it'll be enough or it won't be enough. But I voted yes for the budget because there are a lot of good things. I mean, no budget is perfect, but there were no poison pills in there for me.
Okay.
And I think that we can be reasonable minds as we are all leaders, as we are all elected officials, and we can come together and help determine how we can do certain things. So I would ask the same to somebody else who voted no for the budget. That means they voted no for a lot of good things that help our community. Particularly, you know, there are some things that we did for fatherhood. There's some things that we did for mental health. There's things that we did for families, for child care. We got child care funded for more people who need child care than ever before. We got money in the budget for housing because people are hurting because of housing. And we did get a fair school funding. Like I said, the commitment was made in 2021, pre-COVID. Depending on who you ask, if we think that the General Assembly was going to use a 2025 number, they were never going to use that number. So it's always going to be that if you're using that, then, and you hear people say, oh, they're not funding our schools because they're not going to 2025, they weren't going to. So that's pretty disingenuous to say, well, they're not funding us because of 2025. They've never done that. They're not doing that. Because, first of all, there's not enough money to do that. There just isn't. And we can say, well, we have other priorities, but at the end of the day, there's 28 departments that have to still be funded. State departments, Department of Correction, Job and Family Services, Department of Education and Workforce, Department of Medicaid. All of those have a state budget as well. So everybody has some competing priorities, and what we are tasked to do is do the best that we can with what we have. Now, yes, I did make that commitment. I stand by my commitment. There's a lot of education policy that I have done, and when I was on the Education Committee, I passed at least 4 major bills that actually impact the schools today, and one of those is school safety. So there's a lot that I've done. I can't single-handedly force the Ohio General Assembly to make a law that's going to help specifically Canal Winchester. I wish I had that kind of power, but I don't. But I'm here, and I'm going to continue to be here, and I'm going to continue to listen and continue to advocate the best way that I can.
No,
So thank you for your question.
I do appreciate that. Thank you for the answer.
Welcome.
So it sounds to me from your comments on property tax and what needs to happen with property tax, that if the House does vote to override the vetoes or to override Governor DeWine's vetoes, specifically as they relate to property taxes, it sounds to me like you're probably going to be a yes vote on those veto overrides.
Well, it sounds to you more than it sounds to me because
Okay.
I'm still, you know, I'm I'm having a teletown hall tomorrow. I want to listen to what the auditors have to say. I want to listen to what the constituents have to say. I want to listen to what school districts have to say. I want to listen to the testimony of the House when they actually go on the floor and they make their proposals, and then I'm going to make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm happy to,
No, I appreciate that.
come back and share that, but maybe you know something I don't know.
No, I was just listening to what you were saying. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had wrote a statement, but I'm just gonna kind of highlight parts of it. My issue's less with the funding. There's always winners and losers in the formula, and I knew once the formula was gonna get in, which is great long-term for school districts, we were gonna lose in it. I understood that, but I also understand the long game of the formula is best for us, especially when the next time we hopefully can get base cost adjusted, and that's really the only thing we have left, because at this point, it would be phased in. Mine's more about kind of the democracy of how things are handled when these things were introduced very late in the process. We didn't have a chance to really testify. The emergency levies you're talking about, which we happen to have one, we passed it in 9, we've renewed it in 11, 14, 19, and 24. So if our tax community didn't want it, or if they were confused, they would vote against that. Only 26% of Ohio schools have these emergency levies. I wouldn't consider that to be tax reform. I would consider that to be more of a targeted policy that's really leaving 3/4 of the districts untouched, but the 25% that are touched are drastically impacted. We make decisions just like we did with the DPIA. We played the game to our advantage, and then the formula was changed within it. So it went from what we signed up for 3 years to receive CEP from the federal government to saying, now we're going to change the way that this is calculated, so now the rules are going to change. So the decision that we made was smart. Now it's coming in from the state to make that as a wise decision. So it kind of hurts us. We go borrow money to build a performing arts center, and then the 30% cash balance comes out. So we're making decisions which we feel like is the best decisions, and then legislation's happening that really truly tries to take those good decisions and make them, and it turns them into bad decisions, because had the 30% cash balance got in, we would have had to do something to get that cash over. So we would have lost in the funding formula, we would have lost in DPIA, we would have lost on our emergency levy, and we would have lost interest earnings, because we would have had to get rid of about $25 million. So we would have probably lost anywhere from $5 to $8 million annually just in one budget cycle. And all of those things that we did, we felt like were really good decisions for our taxpayers. We haven't asked for new money since 2009, and we don't have any anticipation to ask for any probably in the next 5 to 10 years. It's just the fact that I understand you want to give the Budget Commission authority, but it takes it from a democracy to a dictatorship when our taxpayers could pass a levy and then the Budget Commission could say, you don't need that levy, we're going to override it and take it away. I just don't feel like that's a democratic government. I feel like that's more of a dictatorship, or whatever you want to call it. It just really, our biggest thing is, I know that the game's going to change a little bit periodically, but it's July 1st, or July 14th, we're already into our budget year, and we may not know the impact of this budget until August or September. I haven't even completed budgets yet because I can't. I've been waiting for the process to run its course, and this is every 2 years. The game changes every 2 years, and it's not just from the state side. It used to just be from the state side, but now it's, let's consolidate the 20 mil floor. Let's reduce the emergency levies. I understand there's a need for tax reform, but it's a bigger picture, and there needs to be more homework done. We have people that live in this district that pay 2% city income tax because they work here, but they're also paying 1 to 2% in another city where they live. that also needs to be looked at. There needs to be some caps put in place to where you don't have to pay more than 3% of local income tax to municipalities or townships or all those. I think it's a much broader piece of the puzzle. And what makes it hard is every taxing authority is different. I mean, just for example, in this district, you can live in our school district and pay $12 less per $1,000 valuation if you live in Fairfield County. Just because you do not have the higher Franklin County, you do not have the higher Madison Township, you don't have all the zoo taxes, all those different things. So $12 per 1,000 just by living in the same school district, different county. It's just kind of the way it works, and I don't know if we're ever going to get a tax reform that is fair across the board. Because at the end of the day, we're only talking about probably 20% of districts that actually levy taxes. The other 80% never dream of levying a tax because they know they can't pass it. And that's outside the suburban areas. So our suburban districts are levying, but your rural districts really aren't.
They try.
They try. Some of them try, but where I'm from, Ironton, and where Vanjie's from, Portsmouth, south of Chillicothe, they don't have levies. It's not even a thing. And I'm sure in like rural areas. And the fact is, people choose to live here because of certain things. They choose to live here for schools. They choose to live here for, and kind of the acceptance of the property taxes and what comes with it is almost assumed. I think there's tax reform that needs to happen. I just think the way that it's happened, coming in 335, coming in at the last minute, all these additions trying to come in and actually get into the budget bill last minute without taking testimony and doing research, I think it was just the wrong way to go about it, to where I don't think most of your colleagues wanted input. I think they wanted to try to get it into the budget bill, knowing people like you couldn't but vote against the budget bill because there's so many other factors in it that you support. And I just feel like that's wrong, and the wrong approach to take.
Well, I appreciate what you've shared. I think that's very fair. I think your assessment is very fair, and I really do appreciate you sharing that. One thing in Ohio that we value is being a local home rule state, where we can, as much as possible, recognize that solutions or decisions should be made at the local level. You can see that that's kind of coming even from the federal government to the states, pushing things to the states, from the states down to the local community. And so I think that that's consistent with the whole county budget. And I know that that's not necessarily popular, at least that's what I'm hearing. I think it sounded good when they were conveying it to us that, you know, we're not passing the buck. We're going to do what we're going to do and pay for it. The state's going to pay for a certain level of property tax relief, and then we're going to allow a county budget commission to even do that much more and weigh in on their local community. So that's really the mindset. I just want you to understand where that's coming from. But I guess, you know, a more democratic system, if I'm understanding correctly, would be let the voters decide, right, about a lot of these issues, right, and even the issue of property taxes going away. That would be a more democratic system. And in the event that the voters decided we don't want property taxes anymore, there's some serious implications for that, but yet and still it would be a democratic process. So, but those are now people who may not have all the information that goes into making decisions like this, or knowing the unintended consequences. And I agree, it's very unfair that they have a timeline for the budget and we have to get as much done as possible, and everybody's trying to get their proposals in, and that's the system that we have in Ohio until we change it. And I also agree with you that this whole school funding formula situation is, you know, it's very complex and it needs a deeper dive. And I'm happy to report that the governor has commissioned a task force, a property tax task force that is going to have certain experts on there. I think former Congressman Pat Tiberi is going to be on that commission to take a deeper dive and look at how do we do it for today's times? How do we live up to today's problems and expectations so that we can be more thoughtful and not be so hurried? And I think that's why the governor decided to veto, because not because he didn't agree with property tax reform. He agreed that we need a better system and we need to take our time. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with him that we need a better system and we need to take our time. So that's why I said I want to take in all of the information. But I think we set ourselves up to fail if we just keep kicking the can down the field. So I'm going to let you in on some inside baseball. It's been said since I got to the Senate that this fair school funding formula, the way it was conceived, is not sustainable. It's just not. So because of that, it's always every year on the agenda on how are we going to do this where we value and honor the schools and we honor our commitment, but how can we fix it? And if we just keep kicking the can down the field, at some point when the bottom falls out, we're going to have this same conversation. So this was the General Assembly that it was decided we have to really do something different. And so we could kick it down the field another 2 years and just say, okay, well, the governor vetoed it. We're not going to do anything. And let's just see what happens with this levy. And hopefully it doesn't pass and we just keep going on. But I can assure you in 2 years, we'll be back right here at this conversation. So I do think that that is very fair, and I appreciate you saying that, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you said. You're welcome.
I have a few comments and questions.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you again for being here. I'm sorry, I have a few comments and questions, and thank you also again for being here. I know we had a teletown hall with you, or a teletown hall not too long ago where you weren't able to attend and you were invited, but weren't able to come. And one of our, Chloe sat in and took the questions.
So,
I'm sorry, no, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
It wasn't the teletown hall. We had a meeting, you weren't able to come, but you did hold a teletown hall
That's
separately from that, and we were able to ask questions. However, what I wanted to ask was, on that teletown hall, it was only about an hour, and it only gave us a chance to ask about 4 questions. And going back to our comments already about fairness and being able to have these discussions prior to these things coming up, how can we really be sure, or how can you really be sure that you're really hearing from your constituents through a teletown hall if there's only 4 questions that's able to be asked with 3 different counties that you represent? And is there a reason why you won't or can't hold a town hall where more people can come and ask their questions? Because the technology of being able to ask questions over the phone is just limited. And an hour is not enough to hear from the constituents that you represent, it seems like. And it would be more efficient to me, it seems, to be able to allow more people to come and talk to you in person, and how can that be arranged?
So let me just say thank you for your comments. I guess the assumption is that I only talk to constituents during a teletown hall. I actually host office hours a lot. I take meetings, which we've had a meeting. So I take meetings and appointments. We've had meetings. I talk to constituents all the time. I've also done, I don't call them town halls, I also do interested party meetings. I also host roundtables that are subject specific, whether it's housing, education. This is just one forum of an efficient way to do something. So it's just another tool for people who may not be able to make that commute. But there's no problem with me hosting various things. I mean, that's why I'm here, so I'm here. I want to be able to answer those questions. But, I don't do things like everybody else does them, but I do try to make sure that I offer a variety of ways to connect with my constituents, so that way anybody can reach me at any given point to talk about their concerns. But we get emails, we have phone calls, we have virtual calls, we do town halls, we do teletown halls, we do roundtables, interested party meetings, and I do want to share that there was public testimony for the budget. I know Groveport City Schools actually showed up and gave opponent testimony on the budget. So was an opportunity through the Finance Committee on the budget to weigh in on this budget and oppose or to support the
On
budget.
the budget bill, we
Yeah.
testified, but House Bill 335 was introduced.
So House Bill
Very,
335
very
is a
late.
non-starter.
Right.
Yeah,
But
that's
a lot
not.
of these provisions came from House Bill 335.
Well, the main problem with House Bill 335, from my understanding, that was giving a lot of heartburn was that it was going to take away the inside millage.
Yeah.
And when that came over to the Senate, we quickly said that's not going to happen. So, but anybody can propose a bill idea, as you know. So that was, it's not going to go any further. Some of those things, like you said, did make it to the budget, but not something that would just completely obliterate our cities and our schools, because we're not interested in doing that.
I have a couple more questions.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you for your answer on that one.
You're welcome.
You mentioned the amount of money that the schools are sitting on.
The what? I'm sorry.
You mentioned the amount of money that some schools and the schools are sitting on. What's the comparison of that to the amount of money that the state sits on for a rainy day fund? And how is it that we think it's okay for the state to tell the school that we can't manage our money at our local level, but the rainy day fund for the state is not being told they can't sit on a certain percentage of their money either, to fund that, where that money could go to fund some of these other things that need help?
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you. My comments earlier was, I don't want to send the message that schools that are being fiscally responsible should not be fiscally responsible. And I don't really know how much the comparison is. I don't know that. I can certainly find out. But it's not on the table to cap cash carryovers anymore. So that's not a situation. Now, obviously, the governor did override, I mean, he vetoed that. It's our prerogative to override it, and at this point, that's not on the table. So, but even if it were on the table, that's, if I am able to cherry pick certain issues and say, yes, I vote yes on this, and no, I vote no on that, I'll do that. But I think that just like with any budget, it's an up or down vote. So we have to see the body of what's on the table and factor it all in. But we are still, as good stewards of the public's money, we still have to say, okay, there's still a property tax situation here. And we have to answer to the people of why some school districts have 250% of their annual revenue and still get fully funded. We have to be able to speak to that. And when we have teachers that are, and teachers unions that say that we need more money because the teachers need to, you know, we need to give salaries to teachers and special education services and all of that, we still have to ask those questions. So that's my response to that.
And I guess this is more like, I don't know if this is really a question or a comment, but we throw out these catchy phrases of school choice. We've always had a choice, public school or private school. That's always been a choice. And now we're throwing out the catchy phrase of no property tax. I think we really should think about throwing these phrases out, because we need to make sure our public and our constituents understand what that means. That, you know, I may be a 19-year-old and I'm only working at McDonald's. Well, I don't care about property tax, but I own a home and that's a different story to me. Or I care about whether or not the police come, my roads are done, the fire people are called. So I think we need to make sure that when we throw these little catchy phrases out, that we also say what that means if we didn't have, and where and what all property tax goes to fund. It does not just fund schools. Property taxes fund a lot of other things in our community, and I think it's important that our citizens understand it's not just about school taxes. It seems like the schools are being picked on with this, but it's not just the schools when you say no property tax. And when you say you have kick the can down the road and it may be 2 years, why not take those 2 years to push reevaluating how properties are evaluated for increasing the taxes on those, and why taxes are the only way to fund these things by increasing the value of the properties? Why not look at that formula of increasing property values in order to get more money, instead of using that as a means of getting more money? Find another way besides property values during those 2 years.
Yeah.
Have a think tank for that, instead of saying nothing's going to get done for 2 years. Why not use those 2 years to try to figure out how can we redo those formulas? I think that would be a better way than just not doing anything for 2 years towards reducing taxes for all, for whatever reason we're doing it, and not affect the schools and the need that the schools need to be able to fund the schools, public schools, for education. That would be my thought on that. And then the last thing is, when we were talking about the SNAP benefits and Medicaid being part of the formula, if we start charging every family now for a school lunch, it's a tax to them. You know, it's more money coming out of their pocket in their household. So maybe we reduce their taxes overall for down to, what did you say? I don't think the number was 26,000. I really think it was more like over 75,000. That there's a reduction in taxes, and I think that reduction is only around 4 or 5%. I don't think it's 2.75, but I have to go back and look at it because I don't remember those numbers exactly that way. But what I was saying is, instead of us saying that if we're going to start making everybody pay for their school lunches again, then we're basically taking their tax right back up because they're not really getting anything back in their pocket by reducing their taxes, because they're going to now be paying more money out for school lunches again. So, I mean, I'm just
All
throwing
valid-
that out there.
Yeah, all valid points. I took some notes. Thank you, and I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, I do think that we need to use this time to look at how we maybe revise the formula. But until we fully phased it in, there wasn't really an appetite for people to say, why are you changing it in midstream? So I think this is the perfect time, so I agree with you. And there is a property tax commission now that's going to be taking that deep dive. I guess the question now becomes if voters can wait, but I also agree with you that when we throw around no property taxes, there's huge implications, and the average person doesn't necessarily know what that is. I was just at the City of Canal Winchester meeting last week, and I did my legislative update and shared with them that as well. And you know, they're like, yeah, that's going to be very impactful to our communities, to our cities, because that's how we operate our cities. But that's also why we're having a housing conversation as well, because as more housing goes in, at least in specific growth areas, smart growth areas, then you can get more property taxes, which can help you with funding your city services. So there's all tied together. Like I said, when I first started, the issues are not as simple as the talking points. Talking points are easy to throw it out there and say different things as if it's just that simple, but I think we run the risk of oversimplifying the issues when we just say those things and we're not, and you don't necessarily know. Like I don't profess to be a scholar in this at all, but I'm interested, and I'm interested in learning how we can do it. So those points that you all just gave, I made some notes, and I will be taking it back, and I'm happy to come back and share.
My last comment would be just be careful of trying to change market value.
Okay.
From 2000 to 2009, our value was very similar to what it's been the last 6 years. It was historically high increases. And then the recession hit in 2009. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just recalling from memory. But the recession hit in 2009, and from 2009 to 2017, we essentially were flat. We didn't receive another penny of real estate value. So the only way that schools could generate more money was to levy. So the only reason we're even discussing tax reform right now is because of inflation, which has driven up the value of these homes. Mm-hmm. It's not because of tax rates. Our tax rates, I've been here 10 years, we've went from 60 mills to 33 mills. So our mills have drastically declined. We're only talking about this because of values. History shows that a recession at some point will happen to where these values come back to fair market value. And the other comment I would make is property tax reform and the formula have to be tied together somehow. Because in the formula, we are hurt because of timing of our valuation increases. Everybody had valuation increases. Ours went up 104%. I looked at other districts, they were 60 and 70%. Theirs went up, but not 104%. It was just poor timing for us when you're using a 3-year average of valuations. So that's one of the big reasons our formula went down, because we're showing that local capacity is strong. So local capacity is strong, state revenue goes down. You're also going to try to now blend emergency levy with the 20 mil floor, which would take us off the 20 mil floor. We are at the 20 mil floor. And not allow us to renew the levy, which we've had in place since 2009, which would cost our taxpayers 12.5% on the homestead and rollback, because at that point, we would not be able to renew. We would have to do a new levy. So I think the discussion.
And Nick, there's also the fact that even though there's inflation, there's also the fact that this area in Central Ohio is growing so fast, and we have not kept up with the market in building enough homes, so the demand is much higher. And so because of that, the value of homes is being evaluated at a higher amount than it probably should be because of demand. And not to mention, we've got a drone company coming and Intel coming and all these people moving to this area that,
It is, but when
so that changes our market value.
when the federal government raises their debt ceiling $2 trillion a year, the Federal Reserve prints that $2 trillion.
Right.
So it becomes a global liquidity. So $100,000, I saw an article yesterday, $100,000 2 years ago, you have to earn 125 now to equate to that 100,000. So yeah, the property values are high, but also the 853,000 isn't truly 853,000 anymore.
Right.
It's probably relative to what you're making because of the inflation and the liquidities that have been put in the market. I don't know the answer to
I
it.
was gonna ask you, do you have any ideas on what would be a viable solution that I could share?
I've started thinking about it. I don't want to say right now.
Okay.
Maybe we can
You can call.
touch base
Yeah.
later.
I'm happy to have that conversation.
So,
Love to hear what you have to say.
but thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would just like to thank you for coming and taking the opportunity to present to us, and then also just to answer our questions. That's much appreciated. I won't add too much because I think everybody covered it, and I think we all made some very good points, and I appreciate you listening. One of the things that I would, and I know you're in a position, but one of the things that I would ask is that we allow for the task force that DeWine is putting together to actually occur, because the changes that Nick mentioned to the 20 mil floor and to the changes in the types of levies that we can levy, that has an impact on us that is, I know we talked about the inside millage when we had the call, but it has a huge impact on us, that we would lose money very quickly from those changes, and that would have a negative impact on us and our students. And the other piece that Nick also mentioned is that we are still in limbo. And we start school, our teachers come back in less than 24 days. And so we are in a position of waiting. And yes, on Monday, the House is going to vote. But then if it passes, how long does it take for the Senate to vote? So I think those things, and just allowing for the process of the task force to happen, where there's voices and we can measure the positives and the negatives from those changes, instead of quickly making decisions on what was vetoed and the impact that we have. I just think taking the time to really research it and do it right instead of doing it quickly. So that would be just my ask.
Approach that we've been doing.
Yep, I appreciate that. Thank you. I wrote that down. Thank you.
Shows high character for you. I want to give you kudos, because you came out here, and not very many senators and representatives are walking out here during a House or a budget bill shortly after to take the fire and take the questions. So
100%.
Well, I do care.
It's appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I do care. So
thank you.
You're welcome. And I will be back. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
welcome.
Next on the agenda is the CWEA.
Good evening, everybody. Kevin
Good evening.
Barhorse, Jasmine Smithers, co-presidents for CWA. We came in to mention what teachers are doing this summer and make a few comments about the state budget bill also. And also, Audrey Rice, our secretary, is here tonight. First of all, Canal Winchester teachers have been involved with professional development, working on advanced degrees and recharging for the 25-26 school year. We know that the balance, the work-life balance is very important, and we're going to be fired up and ready to go here in about 20 days. Is that 20-ish days? Say that. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's good. And then a few things I've taken notes on. I'm not going to belabor the points because I think a lot of board members already made very good points about the state budget. We do acknowledge that the state budget provides a slight increase in public school funding. However, according to NBC4, the Fair School Funding Plan, as it was talked about based on the 2021 numbers, according to their site, it's underfunded by about $670 million to $800 million, or maybe more, depending on who you ask. One of the changes that the Senate made in the state budget was supplying an extra $100 million for high achieving and improving districts. Those are districts that get 4 or 5 star ratings. Fortunately for Canal, we have a 4-star rating, so we're part of that. The 5 and 4.5 star rated schools in Franklin County are Bexley, Upper Arlington, New Albany, Grandview Heights, Worthington, Dublin, and Hilliard, which echoes what Ms. Talley was saying about a lot of the funding going towards more affluent areas. And on top of that, the tax change, the state tax money collected is changing from 3.5% to 3.125% to 2.75% for everybody. But the reductions only apply to families that are making $102,000 or more. So, you know, that it's once again favoring the affluent and leaving out, you know, the everyday Joe. Another thing is the scholarship / voucher / school choice programs that have been supported in our state. In the 23-24 school year, $970 million have left state funds to go to private schools with the school voucher system. That's money that our districts could use. And the whole idea of school choice, I like to think of, and I've seen people relate that to pool choice. If I want to go to the Canal Winchester pool, I can go there. I also have a choice to build a pool in my backyard. I would not expect the city or the state to fund my swimming pool in my backyard. If you decide that, you know, a private school is for your child, then you have that choice. But that money should go to the schools that are public schools. The performance payouts, back to the property taxes. Property taxes that we've talked about with the House Bill 335 that was proposed, but apparently is not going anywhere, would cut funding to the states by $1.5 billion. And that amount of money in the state of Ohio would represent the salaries of about 1/5 of the teachers in the state of Ohio. And of course, we know that $600 million is going to the Cleveland Browns this year to help them with their stadium, while NFL owners are seeing huge rises in the value of their teams. That's hard to believe. Public schools are under attack from the current majority in the Ohio State House. CWA is begging our state reps to put education first. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the 2024-2025 behavioral data presentation.
Thank you. I am going to, I think, stay seated if you guys are okay with that and go through. I have this presentation and another after, and I know in the next one I'm going to be doing a lot of pointing on the screen, so it's just easier to stay here. So in March, if you recall, we had a behavior data for first semester. We compared semester data from semester 1 to semester data from last year, semester 1, so that we could compare an apples to apples. So we're taking the opportunity tonight to share that same data for both semester 2 and year-over-year data. Just as a reminder, our behavior and our discipline data helps us identify trends, support students, and improve interventions at our buildings. And some other information here is discipline and behavior data are recorded throughout each school year, and that is inputted by teachers, staff, and our administrators. The state collects some discipline data for school districts in Ohio, so some of the higher level discipline behaviors are reported to the state, and the data is reviewed as part of our multi-tiered system of supports, which you'll hear tonight as MTSS, and by our district and our building leadership teams. So we're looking at this data at the building level and then also then at the district level. Next, just some challenges as we go through this. You might see some numbers like we increased 200 and some percent. And some of that time, the increases look big or even the decreases look big, but it's just because there's a small number of incidents in some areas. So it's difficult to really evaluate data in those areas when there's small numbers for trends or patterns. And then the other thing just to keep in mind is our previous year's data. So data from last year does not include any students who have withdrawn from the district. So in our current system, as we're pulling numbers, if somebody withdraws, then their information leaves that system, so we aren't able to really have those numbers with us. Moving forward, we will, now that we have these reports, we will keep that and be able to compare the actual numbers. And the other piece, just to make notice of, and I mentioned this in March, is that our buildings report data and our numbers differently. So that is something that it just provides for us some inconsistencies across the building. And as we get through the data presentation, that will be something that I mentioned that we are making some changes for.
Before we move on from that,
Yes.
so why isn't behavior recorded the same at every school in the district?
So that's a great question. It's how the programming is used. So our current system that we use, Power School, the log entries. And for example, at the middle school, once a teacher would input the data and the incident, then what happens is the building has to, and correct me if I'm wrong, give me a nod or not, but the building, in order to keep that information there, has to actually take the data, copy and paste all the information into then this is the incident that I'm gonna get. So they have to take it and almost do double the work to then act off of that. So that's what you see at the high school in Winchester Trail report, and then they copy the data. At the middle school, it was easier not to have to do that extra step, so they definitely took it and they would convert it immediately into whatever the discipline would be. So when we say we report differently, in the data, you won't see office referrals for the middle school because they take those office referrals and convert them into the discipline. So that information's lost in the system. Once we realized that it was being done differently, that's when we decided to make changes, but to make them mid-year isn't gonna help us. So moving forward, which again, we'll talk about later, but moving forward, we are changing our behavior reporting system that will be able to provide us with the accurate data.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great question. So at Canal Winchester High School, the data we're going to be looking at here following these slides, again, like I mentioned, there is the office referral, and those are behavior data that is referred by a teacher or staff member to building administrators. And office referrals could result in discipline actions like alternative behavior placement or detentions. And then discipline is the behavior that resulted in a suspension or an expulsion. So as we're looking through the numbers. The first slide, and again, throughout this whole presentation, we have on the left side of the screen, the semester 1, that's what you saw also in March. And then on the right side is semester 2. And then the next slide you're gonna see is year-over-year data. For the purposes of this, as we go through the presentation, we're gonna look at the year-over-year. But that information will be attached to the board agenda that you can review. So at the high school, our data overview, you can see here that we had a decrease in everything from discipline actions to the number of students who received discipline actions. We had a decrease in total office referrals and the number of students who had office referrals, and the number of students who had a discipline action or office referral decreased. In this instant, the positive that you have that we increased 3% is the percentage of students who only had one discipline action or office referral, and that's what you want. You want that number to go up. That means that only students are having an incident one time, and then they're learning from whatever the discipline action that was given, and so they're not creating more discipline, which is what you want.
And this slide is high school?
This is high school, yep. So we'll first start at the high school. So you see there's definitely a drop across the board in the high school. Go on to the next slide. Again, you'll see the data overview semester by semester, but if you move on to the year over year, we have our ABIP, which is our alternative behavior. It's what you would know as an in-school suspension. So basically, instead of removing them from the school, they would serve a time in a classroom where they're not out and about with the other students. So we saw a 1% decrease with our ABIP. Our suspensions did increase by 7%, and our expulsions also increased by 60%. Again, if you look at these numbers, the 60% expulsion is kind of not a great look because of this low numbers. However, we did see an increase of 3 additional students. The suspension with a 7% increase, we did suspend more kids year over year. Moving on then, when we talked about the state reportable incidents, these would be the state reportable incidents. So you can see year over year, or I'm sorry, semester by semester. Then when you go to year over year, we had a decrease, again, by 3 students, looks like 100%. For alcohol, drugs, we had a decrease of 52% from 33 to 16. Possession or use of weapons, we had a 6 to 3, 50% decrease. Threats or active violence did go up from 25 to 31, and the disruption of the educational process. I recall during first semester, the question was asked, how did we go from 26 to 0? And what happened here is that specific disruption of educational process could be put in another area. So if it's a threat or violence or an act of violence in the past, we could have called that a disruption of the educational process. So it's defining where we're putting those incidents. So this would be something that we would use if it's not a threat or act of violence, if it's not a dangerous instrument, and then as you go on, if it's not fighting, if it's not one of those other incidents. So it's not that we're not having disruption, we're just defining it in other areas. Looking again, then the next steps here, you got acts of disrespect, insubordination. That was a 19% increase towards a staff member. We had a 5% decrease for fighting and physical abuse of another student. 3% decrease on, basically that's vaping. We don't really get a whole lot of cigarette smoking anymore, but that would be vaping, a 3% decrease. And then intimidation or bullying, we went from 2 to 0 year over year. Oh. If you could go, there you go. So some of our reflections from that data that you just saw, at the high school specifically, our discipline actions dropped. So we did have a decrease. Our office referrals declined significantly. So that even the referrals made by the teachers to the office are dropping. We believe that that says that our building level interventions that we put into place are working. We put in several of hallway sweeps this year. We had the change in cell phone policy, and we had staff visibility. And there is also a positive trend in the lower repeat offenders. Moving on to the middle school then, again, as I mentioned, the office referral, we don't track these. They won't be in the data. We switched them over. And then the discipline would be the same. That then is what discipline they received. So the same setup, semester, year over year. Our total number of discipline actions decreased from 563 to 479, so a 15% decrease. We also had a 15% in the number of students with discipline actions. And then the next 3 you can see, the Alternative Learning Center. Again, that's the old school, in school, kind of, you're not in the flow with other students, you're kind of on your own. That decreased 16%. Our out-of-school suspensions decreased 11%, and our expulsions increased 29%. Again, we went down to, that actually decreased. I apologize, I put a plus there. So that decreased. There's always one thing I miss when I'm looking over the presentation. Then looking at the infractions and comparing those, again, the numbers are pretty low. Alcohol, we went from 1 to 2. Drugs, we went from 2 to 5. So those both were increases. Use of weapons, we had from 1 to 2, another increase. We did have a decrease in threats of violence or actions of violence from 21 to 5, which was a 76% decrease. A disruption of the educational process, 9%, but that's pretty, on the same 32 to 29. And then harassing or threatening a student was 10 to 6. Next screen, assaulting another student, went from 4 to 3. Acts of disrespect, insubordination of a staff member or school employee, you'll see here, we had a significant increase. I can remember from first semester when we presented this data in March, we had some questions around that. However, it did increase again in the second semester, so that's something that we definitely need to focus on and dive into what is happening there and why it's happening. Fighting and physical abuse at the middle school also increased from 25 to 40. And then again, vaping had a significant increase at the middle school from 1 to 9. That increased 89%. And our intimidation or bullying went down from 2 incidents to 0. So some of our reflections at the middle school here, our year-over-year discipline incidents and number of students involved declined. And our out-of-school suspension and our alternative learning placement declined, so that's great. However, the disrespect and insubordination towards a staff member, employee remains at a persistent issue for sure, and it was noted in both semesters. Fighting physical abuse of another student increased, and our vaping increased. Moving on to Winchester Trail, again, the office referral and the discipline, very similar to that of what the high school, obviously a lot different when you're looking at the younger kids, but the office referral would be the behavior referred, and the discipline is then what the discipline action is. At the Winchester Trail, that could include suspensions, after-school detentions, in-school alternative placements, etc. So looking here year over year, at Winchester Trail, we had drops in discipline actions, number of students, and our total office referral, or I'm sorry, so our discipline actions and our number of students, we did have an increase in our total office referrals, but our number of students that also had those office referrals also increased. We did not have a percentage of students year over year. We didn't have the number from last year that only had 1 office referral, so we were unable to figure that data out. Here, you can see here, year over year, after school detentions, we use that very minimally. Emergency removals, we only had 1 both years. Our out-of-school suspensions went from last year at 52 to 7, and our in-school placement went from 0 to 34. I will share that if you go back 1 slide, Nick, if you don't mind, you can see first semester for our in-school discipline, we had 1 for this year, and in the second semester we had 33. That was Dr. Dyer had found a person that could cover that because he wanted to reduce the amount of times we were putting kids out of school. So that's that number. You can see that we didn't use it in the past, which is why you saw an increase of its use.
But then we didn't have to out-of-school suspend
Correct.
kids. We
Yep.
kept them
So
in
you had we already had a decrease with out of school, but also you kept them in school.
Right.
Yep. Which is what we want to do, if possible. Winchester Trail reflections, our discipline actions declined significantly, indicating that we made major progress there. Referrals increased slightly. We did have new leadership at the building, and they had a revamped, again, MTSS and RTI system that appears to be effective at that building. And moving on to Indian Trail, and I forgot to change the picture. I'm just going to draw attention to it because it's right there, and that was a note to change. But office referrals, so behavior that referred by a teacher or a staff member to a building administrator, and discipline then at Indian Trail, that means that behavior resulted in a discipline action. We don't have notes on what that discipline action was. So it wasn't in the system on what, so it was just that there was discipline given, the what we don't know. But you can see here that we had, we discussed this at the last meeting, we had significant increases in behavior, both discipline actions, the number of students that were receiving the discipline actions, and the total number of office referrals, and then those students that were getting it. So.
Which school is this?
This is Indian Trail. Yep. All right, next one. So some of the reflections that we have here is there were significant year-over-year increases in both office referrals and discipline actions. One note is 19 students were responsible for the 35 discipline actions in the past school year, 24-25. The one thing to note is there was an increase in the intensity and the frequency of challenging behaviors, particularly in kindergarten. So one thing that we have not seen the behaviors that we saw this year at the intensity and the frequency that we did. And so that definitely played in part to those discipline referrals. So our action steps, as I mentioned, we are implementing a new behavior tracking system district-wide for the 25-26 school year. So one of the really good things about that is our current system limits us to the information that we put in. For example, if a teacher is entering behavior, they have to do the student name, what happened, and that's pretty much it. The other fields aren't required. We want to dial in and put what time did it happen, where did it happen, who else was involved, so that we can start to really analyze the data and find out, is it happening during lunch times? Is it during class changes? Is it in the morning? Is it in the afternoon? So that then we can start to really make decisions on where we need to have adults or try to decrease the times that those students are there. It will also allow for us to be consistent across the board with Dave's question at the beginning of why are you doing things differently. This will streamline our process. The next thing with that being said, we will have an MTSS and our RTI system will be aligned across both Indian Trail and Winchester Trail Elementary. Winchester Trail did have you saw their results. They had great results from that, and so that's something that Indian Trail will also be implementing as well moving into next year for both the MTSS and our RTI systems. It does look different at each building, but the structures will be in place. The next one here, the MTSS teams will focus on reviewing behavior and targeting supports. We do that already, but with the information that they'll have from our new reporting system, it will allow them to really dive in to look at the things that we just discussed, where it's happening, what's happening, and try to really reduce those behaviors as they're happening. And then the last thing, really specific to Indian Trail with the behaviors that we had and the increases, we are restructuring our special education and our behavior resources at Indian Trail. And so those restructures will allow us to have different resources, different options for our students so that when they are experiencing those behaviors that are a lot and different than we're used to, we have the supports in place to be able to provide them with resources and honestly the support that they need to learn how to self-regulate and work through those behaviors so that we can then get them back into the classroom. That's our goal, is that once we are able to address the behaviors and they're able to move back into the system and there's not issues anymore in the big picture.
So will this be in place for the upcoming school year?
It will, yes. Yep, this will all be in place starting with the 25-26 school year. Yep. Next slide, please. Questions? Are there any other questions? Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all taking the time, and if there's any questions that you have once you review, if you want to look at semester to semester, please feel free. I know that the data presentation was one thing that Adam has asked, and he has already mentioned he wasn't able to be here tonight, but he, I believe, is listening, and that he, will provide some questions as he has, but we appreciate that. All right. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a quick drink. All right.
And are we moving on to the CW Performing Arts Center and Athletic Facilities?
We are. We're moving on to the next presentation.
Yes.
Which is just providing an update. The last time in January, we presented to you the master facility planning, and we went through the process of what was phase 1, what was going to be phase 2, and we talked through where we're at. We have spent the last month since then meeting and discussing where we're going to go, and I think we have a little bit more detailed information that we'd definitely like to share with you. So we'll start with the Performing Arts Center. Last time we came to you, this slide actually said 800 plus, and we have looked at the number, and it will be 700 plus seat Performing Arts Center. And that currently, let me start over. Before I move forward, please understand that none of these decisions have been made. These are a work into what we want to have happen. We will need to bring it in front of the board. That will happen in September, and that will have a price tag attached to it. So as we're going through this, we are working with Summit and Shore. They know where we stand with our budget. However, as we're talking, we're going off of the things that we really would like to have and think are, I won't say a necessity, but some of these are a necessity. Others are, hopes. And so I want to just mention that. So nothing in here is a final product, but we're getting closer. All right, so we'll move on to say that the Performing Arts Center is developed with a fly space and the orchestra pit. It will have a multi-use lobby space. It will be connected to Canal Winchester High School. And with that will be renovation and upgrades to the current music spaces, including an addition of a theater classroom, and it will also provide additional parking. So I have here a slide from our architects so that I can just, it's the layout of the Performing Arts Center. So you'll see and I'm gonna point, but Nick, I see you have the mouse, which is good. So this area here, this light gray that's not gridded is actually the current building. So we will add here, you'll see the seating area, the PAC that's here, and up above is the stage. So it's a pretty large stage that allows us to do a lot with it. And in the back, there's a thin area that will be for storage, and also changing rooms for the cast. Nick, what's that you're circling? Can you read it?
Bathrooms, I think.
Bathrooms for then the changing rooms. You'll see that there's large doors. This will be a hallway that will be backstage, so mainly for use for the theater kids, not those who would be coming to watch. Here would be our new theater classroom. This space would have been like a basically grass area, so we're making the use of it. It will be able to be used if anybody went to one of the, I forget what it was, but they did a performance on stage this year. So if you went to watch, you actually sat on stage. Those type of performances would be able to be smaller and be able to be used in this theater classroom. We have a large lobby area that you see out here. We have new restrooms, and then we're also able to use the current restrooms that are in the new wing that we opened just, 21, I believe. So we're able to take access to those, which was nice because we didn't have to make the restrooms on the right side as large. And so the entrance from the high school would be through the new wing here, and then also there'll be several entrances from the outside.
Yeah, this is a great design. We kind of ran into a snafu on the other design to where it was interfering with our mechanical space, and this actually ended up
Worked out better.
because then we could utilize this bathroom space and lock this up. So now you don't have access to the halls. Before, we were going to have to do something gated or something to block off the halls. This is going to allow us to restrict access, and then it really opens up 2 full bathrooms, which was highly needed.
Yeah. And a huge cost. If we would have had to go through the equipment room, it would have been a huge cost of unseen.
So then they
Space.
kind of added this little space right here to break it. It was cutting off somewhere in here, and we were going to use this as an access point, and we were going to have to circle around to the bathrooms. But now having direct out, you can see this wall comes out a little bit. That way it's a little bit private and kind of takes the sound down. That way if you're in the restroom, it's going to make it more like a private restroom for the PAC.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
very smart designing by
Yes.
Shore.
All right, moving on to the next one. Here is our image of what it would look like, so a rendering. Again, I know we showed a rendering back in January, but this is actually different. One of the things that we really wanted to make sure is that no matter where you were around the building, that when you saw it, it was pleasing on the eyes and welcoming. And so the next couple slides are different views that you will get from the Performing Arts Center.
You can kind of see there's going to be 3 different elevations here. This is the
Fly space.
stage area, and that's the fly space, right? The
No,
higher,
actually, the fly space is
The
the
shorter?
stage area. I
Okay.
learned, we went and visited Lancaster, or Lancaster, depending on, and they have a very similar, and I learned officially what a fly space was. So
this
it's
is
pretty much,
taller, 'cause our mechanicals
That
are going to
right?
go on the 2nd story, so you don't have to do roof units and put those to weather, so.
yeah. And Audrey, I'm right? The fly space is above the whole stage. Yeah. I thought it was just a small part too, but it is all above, so really nice. All right, and then moving on the next slide. One more. Yep, here you go. So this one here, again, we have not done renderings yet for what we will have it look like. But again, it is very similar to what Lancaster has put together. So this is, I stole it straight from their book. We went to visit and he had scanned me some images. So this is a view from out looking in, and then the next one will be from the stage looking out. We'll have, again, some changes. This does not mean that we'd have all this wood or that we would. Those are designs that we'll be able to pick. But we did not have renderings, and we wanted to give an idea of what this space would look like. All right, and if you recall, so because we're doing the Performing Arts Center, and that was going to take up some parking, we have to do some other pieces from the outside areas. So from that, we will have additional parking that would be created. We will have a new traffic flow. We will have a band practice field that we'll have to move. We will have a new baseball diamond, 2 new softball fields, additional green spaces, and we will be relocating the fuel pumps. So again, those are all reminders of what was happening. Basically, because we put the PAC on, it is changing different things. So because of those changes, we were required to make some changes with all of this. Next slide. Additional outdoor improvements that we are also doing within the project. We will relocate, which we talked about this a little bit, but we're relocating the drive, and that will actually allow us to connect the drive from Dietz all the way then to the drive back here behind the education center. So it will connect the 2 campuses, whereas currently, if you are on the football field side of the stadium, you can't drive around to get to the tennis court side of the high school. Real quick, go back. Yep, thank you. We're relocating the football practice field. We're relocating the track and shot put discus area, and we are adding 2 additional tennis courts. So the first one here is a rendering of the baseball field. So the road that you see the little mouse going off of, oh, he's getting that. There is Dietz, so definitely doesn't look like Dietz, but you can have an idea. That's Dietz Road. You'll see the football stadium road is out there. So this will take place currently. There is I believe the JV softball field is out there. This will take place. It will have a press box with storage. It will have seating. It will also have the dugouts on both sides. And then it will have the batting cages, 2 batting cages, and then the bullpens on both sides. So there'll be batting cages only on one side, which would be the home side, I believe, and then the bullpens will be on both sides. Currently, and we really need to wait to see the number, the dollar amount, but we are talking turfing the infield and also potentially looking at turfing the entire field. There's reasons for that. I know one of the comments that came last month was trying to get a timeline on, okay, can we play a season and get the field done by the time the next season rolls around? One of the things that, just looking around in the area, there's not really another baseball field that we can use. So that puts us in a situation, I do believe, and we'd have to talk with the city, there are softball fields in town that we could use. So if we have to be off for a season, we could probably, for softball, it would create some just challenges if baseball has to move. And one of the things we were told is that you need 2 growing seasons. So I had asked the question, well, could we play this spring and then have it ready to go for next spring? And they said that only gives you 1 growing season. So if you're playing on sod, you can do it, but you're going to do some damage to it if it doesn't have 2 years of growth. So we are going to look at different alternatives. They have shared that we will have that information on a timeline for sure by September meeting, probably earlier. But we've asked specifically to say, is that something that we could have? And they're supposed to bring it back to us once they know a timeline. They do have one district that is currently, they called it kind of a pilot district, that is doing just what we've asked. So they played on it this year. The builders got it immediately after, and they're told they have to have it ready for the next season. So they'll have some idea, but we really want to make sure, I don't want to spend to have a field that's great and then we damage it in the first season playing on it. But we will definitely price out the turf for the full field, which if we get full turf, it's not an issue. It can play a season, we get full turf, and then we can play the next season on it.
I'm assuming there's restrooms in the press box or no?
There are not.
Okay. So no restrooms there?
No
And what
restrooms.
about parking for the field?
So there is no parking on this side. There would be parking alongside Dietz. And you'll see a little bit later, there is parking up where Nick has his mouse going back and forth.
Okay.
It's not a huge amount of parking, but it's definitely parking.
Okay. So will the ADA, I guess, parking be on Dietz like it was at one point with
It
that
will
and use
be
that
right,
sidewalk?
it will be right where Nick's
Okay.
cursor is at.
Okay.
Yeah, which is actually almost right where it's at right now. We've got 2 spots in there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just reiterating, I know we discussed this before, we're going to ensure that the actual Performing Arts Center will be ADA accommodating, and also the seats will be adequate.
Yes, 100%. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Nick, can you go back to the inside? We'll do this. actually, keep going to the one picture.
There?
Nope, like the one that was the drawing from right here. So on this picture, actually what we will have is one side, I believe it is the side that you had over there where the doors go out. So the one cool thing about the Performing Arts Center is when you're back of stage, which again, learn something new, that means when you're in the back, and you're looking at the stage, it will be on the same level. So basically the seats will be built down, and where you stand when you walk into the back of the Performing Arts Center will be on the same level as the stage. So one side of this will actually be a full ramp that takes you up to the stage. So you would be able to access the stage from, you'd never have to leave the actual Performing Arts Center, and you'll actually be able to go straight on stage from the ramp that's off to the side.
And you won't
which
have
is
to
pretty
go
cool.
Up a ramp.
And you
It'll-
don't have to
it'll
go
be
up,
level,
correct, you don't have to go up a ramp. So there is a slight, obviously, incline in the seating area, so you may have to go back and around, but you would be able to access the stage from that area. The other cool thing about it, our architect, Mike Dingledine, he's great, but he was really excited about this. He's like, this doesn't happen, but he said it will also allow for the theater to use that as part of the stage. So for example, this made sense to me, but he said if you're doing Wizard of Oz, that could be part of your Yellow Brick Road because it's there, you can use it, and it's not like separate from, it's a part of, which is just really cool. But yes, and seating will be something that when we get to that point, that's down the road, but we will definitely pick out quality seating. So thank
And
you
our
for
sound
asking.
system will be really
And the sound
nice.
system will be great, yes, yes. And they're still working on that. They have experts that come in to help us with lighting and sound and all the things. All right, thank you. Okay, so the baseball field. So here comes then our softball field. Again, you can see the location. You can see where the Performing Arts Center is from this. And we're really excited about this. We're able to provide 2 softball fields, which is what we have now. The press box will have views to both softball fields. And again, the fields will look exactly the same. They'll both have the dugouts. The only difference will be the varsity field, which is actually the field to the left. The varsity field will have the bullpens and the batting cages. The JV field would not have the bullpens and the batting cages. But other than that, if you go to the next view, you can actually see from a different view. This is probably my favorite picture that we have because you can see the softball fields. You can also look and see the practice football field. No, that's not turf, but that would be our practice football field. And then you can see the Performing Arts Center in it, and you can also see the baseball field to the right. And then the field house, which we'll get to. But I love this picture because you can see the only thing it doesn't show, which we'll get to here, is like the band practice field and the tennis courts. But you can get such a good view of how this facility project is all coming together. One more thing that I'd like to make a note on the softball field. So we all got emails from some of the homeowners that live back behind the current baseball field. And this layout, actually, they should not have a ball in their yard, period, because of where the location of it is. If somebody they'd have to hit a shot to make it into the yard, and that would be home runs, and it's going to happen. It would have to be a shot. So I think that's something that I did share. They have not seen the actual layout of it, but the ones that were contacting us, I did share, and they were very happy to hear that. So we were able to take that into consideration. And it actually, I think, works better because it is closer to parking. All right, next we have, here we have the field house. The field house will include a 50 by 30 turf field. If you remember when we first came to you, it was 60 by 60 and it had everything in it. And we'll kind of talk through why there's some changes to that. It will have a large locker room, an athletic training room. It will have office space. It will have uniform storage, which is something that we had discussed was a pretty big need. We'll have a team meeting room, film room, VIP room. We also will have a VIP patio and additional parking. Updates to our current stadium facilities. So those would be the current concession stand, locker room area, and then our current weight room and turf. We would update those. Those would include remodel of the current home and visiting locker rooms, addition of individual shower bathrooms, updating official coach's office space, updating the training room, expanding the current weight room, and addition of a golf room with 2 simulators. So here is a layout that you would see of the field house. So the 50 by 30 foot turf which is the green and the blue. The light blue you'd see, that would be the locker room. That's going to be for large teams. So you would be looking at football in the fall and the track team in the spring. It will have the training room that's there in the middle of part of the pink. And then you see the classroom down below. Off to the left, the purple is the uniform storage that would be upstairs. And then down to the bottom, the left is just the basically, I believe it's the air conditioning. Yeah, which will actually have a nice fence around it.
I think this goes over this area right here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next view, we have the current concession stand area and locker rooms. So the front two, you actually have, will be remodeled into two smaller locker rooms. That's currently the football locker room. That would give us more locker room spaces for soccer, for some of our lacrosse. So our sports that are in the stadium would be able to have access there. You would have then a walkway that takes you through. We would remodel, like I mentioned, the visiting locker room, and the spaces that we have in there would be remodeled. They went through this building and looked, and the foundation it has is very strong. Like, it's a great space. We just need to look at it. We will not touch the restrooms. We might, I don't know, they don't need much, but we might paint them. But there's not any construction to that or the concession stand area. And then here's a visual of the field house that you would see looking at it from, if you're flying a drone over Dietz, looking down on it. One thing that I want to make note of is that when we do the project, we want to make it that it's almost one facility, so it's almost all on one campus. So you'll notice that when you build it, it'll all look very similar, and it's almost like it's connected. It's not connected, however, under each one there'll be doors that walk you through and a cover. So although you will have to walk outside for a couple steps, it'll still allow you to feel like you're in the same area. So this space then would be to the side. It's currently in the hill, and to the right, if I'm sitting in the stands, it would be to the right of the current stands where the students are sitting. And that's the parking lot that you can see that could be used for baseball, and also then for, if they're going into workout or whatnot. And it is ADA, yep. All of this will be ADA. So here's a vision of the field house with the turf area. You'll notice that there are the screens that would drop down from above that would allow us to have different sports teams in there at different times for privacy, so to speak, or safety. It will also have the baseball, the softball net, the hitting nets that would come down that we would be able to have. It will be temperature controlled, but at a certain temperature. It's not going to be air conditioned down to like 65 degrees, but it would be enough so that if we have those hot spells during the summer, we can knock it off a bit. And then the classroom that we would have, the team meeting room here, you can see it. This would be, right now, we're naming it the Indians meeting room. We could talk through that, but this will be the classroom. The door that you see to the right would be into the turf area. So that would most likely be where the football team will exit out to go to the field. But this gives you an understanding of what that would look like. We also talked that on our game nights when we're doing different celebrations, so, Hall of Fame, this could be an area where we host that and allow for not only a place to have it inside, but then also a place to go out and watch the game. The next one then would show another view of the field with that meeting room, and you can see the patio. And then the next one is a point of view from that patio. So your viewing experience is going to be very good. You're able to see the whole field. So we envision
The board members.
Board members could be a possibility, but it would give us an opportunity to do different events and, have them and be able to host. So we're really excited about that. Again, I didn't mention this, but all of this comes with also the bleacher expansion that would happen on both the home and the visitor side. And then this here is our master site plan. You can see the whole version in one place. So it allows you to see the field house, the new baseball field. You still get some green spaces, which we have just outlined as green spaces. So those could be the soccer practices or whatnot. There is a detention pond. This will not be wet for the majority of the time, but it will be wet when it's a heavy rain. So it's typically, you won't even know it's there, but when there's heavy rain, it will be where the water stands. You have your field events that's to the left of that, moving down to the practice football field, and you can really see the drive here too that goes from Dietz all the way down outside of the parking down and then cuts over. And then you see the additions of the 2 tennis courts, which would give us 8, and the band practice field.
Yeah, and having the ability to do the detention pond here saved us about $750,000.
Yes.
Before it was over here and it was gonna be an underground, we were gonna have to get it out to Washington, which was going to be a small challenge. So moving it over here not only saved us a lot of money, but it opened up really a better site for the softball field to go, because before it was over more near the maintenance barn. It was kind of splitting the maintenance barn with the maintenance barn in the middle. So I think it gives us a better site and gives us a much better area for the detention pond. It's just naturally where that's like apparently the lowest spot on this whole site, so it works out really well. Almost worked out perfectly. So we got lucky there kind of with the site.
Will it be tied into the drain to Dietz?
No, I think it'll be a drain that's just in the center. Mike can probably speak more.
It will be tied into Dietz? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any questions?
Yes, can you review the time frame again for phase 1 and phase 2?
Yes. So phase 1 is what we're working on now. It's really been our focus, and what we're shooting for right now is that it will be ready for the start of the 27-28 school year. That's the safest bet. There is some talk that the Performing Arts Center might be ready earlier, but it's safe to just say we most likely are hoping for ground movement to start in like January, February.
Mm-hmm.
So this summer you'll start to see a lot happening, but we won't see anything happening until January.
We're ahead of the game from a architect standpoint. We're in the schematic design phase, but I feel like the drawings are a little beyond schematic design. So schematic design is they take all your thoughts, everything you want to do, and then the CMR puts their budget to it, the architect puts their budget to it, and then they reconcile and bring it to us, and they let us know. And at that point, we're either good, we're good to go forward, or a lot of times you might be over budget, or sometimes you're under budget, and then we can make adjustments based off of that. And then they'll get into design development where it's more detailed. So it's not just, hey, here's a table. The table's going to have 6 chairs. It's going to have USB ports and all of that. So, and then they'll do another budget based off of that. But all along the way, you will approve the schematic design budget in September, and then you'll approve the design development budget a couple months later, and then we'll have construction documents and take it out for a guaranteed max price. So we'll have a couple opportunities to kind of touch base with the market to make sure we're on track to actually do it along the way, so that way you don't have any surprises once you get the construction documents. By the time we get the GMP, we know about 99% that it's going to cost X. So there shouldn't be any surprises, and most of the time your bids come in under GMP because they're going to estimate over a little bit, and that allows us to maybe add some contingencies. And maybe at that point we say, you know what, let's just turf the full baseball field if money's available, or turf the full softball field, or whatever it may be. So hopefully we're in that situation and we're not having to trim back and reduce things.
Okay, thank you.
And what did we say, phase 2?
Phase 2 is all contingent on growth.
Okay.
So we would be looking at, and again, with our conversation today, but that came also with knowing what property taxes and what the bonds falling off would do. So I think right now and in our presentation, we were looking, that would be minimally 5 years down the road. Probably, what did we say, 2032 is when the bond falls off. So
Range, yep.
the timing of that. There's also other small changes that we talked about when we were talking about phase 1, just to mention, but we talked about the basketball. We were gonna remove some bleachers so that the basketball team and the volleyball team can sit on chairs in front of the bleachers. That's already happened. So that's already taken place. We talked about potentially updating the locker rooms and the indoor space. and then also the Aux Gym becoming the wrestling gym. And so those are already things that we're taking into account and looking into.
No, Mike, you've done some work on the middle school football field
Yep.
in
yeah,
the
they'll be moving
off-season.
back.
The basketball court at the middle school is done. They're coming out and
Yeah, looks nice.
resanding a little bit
Yep.
on Wednesday, and then that's ready for the school year. If you haven't seen it, go look at it. It's great.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's really much lighter in that gym with the light gray walls and the much lighter floor. Everything was dark before.
It
Now
looks
it's
great.
really light and looks very sharp.
Yep. And that is one thing, again, middle school football will move back to play middle school football at the middle school.
What's the timeline? Do we have to go back before zoning or council to get any kind of a final approvals? I'm assuming we will, but.
Yeah, there'll be
what's the
permits
expected
along the way,
timeline
but the city's.
They've been
The
working.
city's been very accommodating, with this project, so.
They've been working with them, touching base with them at
So
pivotal
kinda keeping
points.
them in the loop as
Yeah,
we
there's
go, so there's
communication
no
happening both
surprises.
ways, so it's been really
Great.
nice. Yep.
Okay.
Our sewer's well aware that they need to stay ahead of the game, so they are, and I think the city appreciates that. So, like I said, I think we're a little bit ahead from a design standpoint. We just need to, hopefully, Summit can wrap up their other project and maybe get out here a little sooner and break some ground and get the site at least moving some dirt.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kaya.
Of course.
Next on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any?
We do not.
We do not have any public comment tonight.
Great, thank you. Moving on. The next thing on our agenda is our executive reports. CWJRD.
Treasurer.
I'm sorry, the treasurer's reports first.
I'll be brief. Year over year, this is the easiest report because we can actually look at it how we did performed on the fiscal year. You can see year over year. Where are we right here? Revenues are going to look like they're up tremendously. Ms. Reynolds kind of alluded to the DPIA funding that we picked up. That was strategic on our part. To add that, you can see we lost in state funding. But we also saw that coming as well, knowing the formula wasn't going to change. So that's why we did the DPIA with the CEP program. That's why we did full-day kindergarten when we did it. And you can see that real estate values did pick up because it was a full year after the reappraisal. It was the first full year of collections for us. This will streamline down, especially if the emergency levy gets consolidated into the 20 mil floor, and especially if the emergency levy is forced to go down and not be renewed in 5 years. But really, the collapsing of the emergency levy into the 20 mil floor is going to stunt any growth that we have. So right now, we're at the 20 mil floor, and the emergency levy is separate. So the emergency levy's decreasing, but it's not impacting the floor. So we will see growth at 20 mils on our existing. If we add the emergency levy to it, we won't see any growth. It will just add the 8 mils to the 20, so we'll be at 28 mils instead of 20. So every time values go up, we'll just reduce down from the 28, and we really won't see that much growth. So that's the only real impact of the emergency levy. Lucky for us, the reappraisal for Franklin happened 2 years ago, so we were able to at least sustain some of this. But in direct comparison, when we received this went down from 22 million. So we really didn't gain. We just took away from real estate taxes, or took away from state and gave it to real estate. I mean, so it wasn't really an increase. And then all other revenues are up. A lot of that's warehouse, a lot of that's interest earnings. Property tax allocation goes right in line with this. So as property taxes are up, this is the state reimbursing for the 12.5% homestead and rollback. So that's expected to be up. Income tax up 9.5%, 637,000. If you remember last year, we were down slightly. It was off trend. I think we're back to trend. Wages continue to be up. But this will be the last substantial year for probably property tax growth. and we won't definitely see a growth in these two lines next year. So we're going to be pretty stagnant in revenue, other than us trying to create other revenue, probably for foreseeable 2 or 3 years coming forward. So we're going to have to pretty much learn to live on about 64 million for probably a while, which we spent 62.9. Of that was 6.5 of transfers. We went ahead and transferred 5 years of the debt payment. We're going to have some transfers moving forward, mostly from food service. We're going to range from 550,000 to 700,000 because of the CEP program, because we're losing money in food service. But that was worth it when we were gaining 2.4 million, so we're still a 1 point net gain, and all of our kids are eating for free. So we still want to continue that as long as we can. We're technically in that program for 3 years regardless, unless we could somehow get a waiver. Not expecting to do that no matter what happens in the state budget. I think having the free lunches is well worth it to at least go through the full CEP program. Then we can analyze it after that, once we're done with that. And we may not even qualify because they're changing the rules again, so we may not even qualify in the next CEP anyway. So we'll have to evaluate that in 2 years. Expenditure-wise, we knew we were going to be up in salaries. A lot of that is us bringing $3.5 million back of ESSER. So 3.5 of this 8.9 was directly from ESSER, and then the other pieces were changing the salary schedules pretty drastically for CWEA. But all of those things were needed, and we knew it was going to happen. Otherwise, we were pretty stable in supplies and purchase services. We brought the mechanics in-house, so we saved about $450,000 there. And then throughout the other budget line items, we had some decreases on purchase services. And that's where we're going to try to stabilize things, because we're not looking to do anything here. And regardless of the budget, when it happens, we're not making changes in the coming year. We may tweak a few things here and there, but it will be non-impactful to people, will be non-impactful to staff. Anything that we can do to not impact the educational value is what my goal will be. I don't know where we'll be next year, but I don't expect us to have to do a ton more. But we'll make some little tweaks to try to offset out into the future. But at the end of the year, we were right on target with forecast, 40.65 million. Overall cash sitting with 93.2. Now, that's driven up by, we borrowed 14 million, so that's debt proceeds that are sitting there helping to drive that up also. That money will disappear once we start paying on the project. We're earning interest on that right now. Expect to earn about $800,000 from the bond proceeds, and we'll apply that directly towards the project. It'll be a part of the budget. 2.73 million earnings on interest this year, another good earnings years. That's what I was speaking to with Senator Reynolds. If you started to cut and force people to lose the cash balances, you start losing pretty significant revenue, and it would almost be more detrimental than the state budget if you were to lose. I mean, if we were to go from saying 70 million to having to shrink our investments to 40 million or 30 million, you're losing substantial revenue on the earnings. So it would probably be more impactful than even the state funding. But combine all of those things, then it kind of gets your attention a little bit. So, any questions on the fiscal year? Forecast is changing. I haven't quite looked at it yet. I know it's not going to be in November. Now it's, I think, in August. It's not a 5-year, it's a 4-year. Technically, they're calling it a 3-year with the current year, which is really makes it a 4-year. So we'll have to look at that. But I plan to continue to maybe show a 5-year. At least we'll have an idea. Because I do a 10-year on the back end anyway, just to kind of make sure we're trending in the right direction. So, any questions for fiscal year 25? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our superintendent's report.
All right,
We talked about this earlier, but we are gearing up to welcome our students and our staff back for the 25-26 school year. Our new staff will begin orientation on August 4th, and all returning staff will return for their work days on August 7th and 8th. Convocation will take place on Monday, August 11th, and the first student day is Tuesday, August 12th. We do have our back-to-school guide live and on the website, and that will include everything that our families need: important dates, staggered start details, checklists, supplies, and more. We're also reminding families to complete their back-to-school forms and transportation request in PowerSchool by August 1st to ensure students are placed on a bus route before the route information is released on August 5th. In exciting news, which Nick mentioned, all students will continue to receive free breakfast and lunch this year thanks to our participation in our community eligibility provision. We look forward to another great school year filled with growth, connection, and opportunity. That concludes my report, and thank you all for your continued support.
Yay. Next is our board committee reports, CWJRD.
Yep, so for CWJRD right now, open registrations. There are several performing arts workshops. If you're interested in any performing arts whatsoever, we've got some really good workshops going on this summer and going into the fall. So also have the IRES Sound Bath. I know that sounds really cool and interesting. Please take a look at it because it is. Karate is also open right now, and yoga in the park. And then the annual CWJRD kind of summer get-together party right now that is scheduled for tomorrow night. Nope, Wednesday night. But that might be moving depending on weather. So look for, if you're interested in going, which I hope you all are, keep an eye on the website just in case it gets rescheduled because of weather.
Where's it going to be this year?
It is going to be in the big grass area back behind Stradley Park. No, I'm sorry, in the education center area, in the grass education center area. Right? Yes? Yes.
Is that where it was last time? The education center area?
Yes,
The same place it was last time?
I believe so.
Okay.
You were on board last year.
Yeah.
Is it
I
the
didn't know
same
that's
place
what
as
it,
it was
I don't
last
know
year?
that's what it's called. That's what I'm more concerned about. like-
Yes.
Okay. Because if it was the same place, then that is what it's
Yep,
called.
and they're going to have many more bounce houses this year. Still going to have the ice. If the kids wear their jersey, their JRD jersey, then they get a free like an icy type drink. There's going to be some limited food vendors there. We'll also be collecting, if anybody's got any gently used sporting equipment, we'll be collecting that for the JRD rummage sale as well. So any of the athletes in the room or listening, any of the parents of athletes, if you've got any gently used equipment, please bring it.
OSBA?
Yes, my report will be brief this evening, considering the discussions we've had with Senator Reynolds. I concur with our CWEA presenters as far as the state budget, so I'm not going to be redundant. I just want to highlight again that the Ohio House is scheduled to meet on Monday, July 21st at 11 a.m. to consider veto overrides for 3 line items. In totality, Governor DeWine had vetoed 67 line items. But as of now, there's 3 that will be under consideration for the veto overrides.
Are all those to do with schools?
All of them, those 3 have to deal with property taxes, yeah. Those 3 items that Senator Reynolds discussed. And I'm just asking for folks to join me in contacting their state representative, asking them to vote no. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. Student Achievement Liaison?
Nothing to report.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we'll start first with, number 2 is the minutes from the June 9th regular meeting and the June 13th special meeting and the June 26th special meeting. Number 3 is donations. We have 2 donations from Scott Weibel for the mini pitch at Winchester Trail and Indian Trail. Number 4 is our certified
Do we have a timeline on that? I
It
know
actually is Mike, the concrete's laid and it's in. Do we know when the? End of the week.
Ooh, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So number 4, then, we have our certified personnel. We have our resignation and retirements. All of those are resignations. Moving on to our teacher recommendations, we do have several of our teacher recommendations that we are asking you to approve, and then approving extended days for next year for school psychologists. Number 5 is our classified personnel. Again, we have our resignations, and then we have classified recommendations as well, and our substitute classified recommendations. And moving on to number 6 is our supplemental and our personnel stipends. And again, we have resignations. Most of those resignations are actually changed throughout. Again, just as a reminder, we make changes because we're changing the process that we have for hiring our coaches and advisors. So there will be some of those changes with resignations and then also rescinding of contracts. But then we also are hiring in several other for one-year supplemental contracts for next school year. And the majority of those are for fall sports. And we also are approving our volunteers. And number 7 is our substitute pay rates. So this is something annually that we approve, which would be our substitute pay rates. And there are no changes. I don't believe there are changes from different approvals at last year. And we will, although we will be updating van driver pay, van driver pay, bus driver pay, and custodian to fall on their classified salary schedule at level 1.
Do we need to take a separate motion for number 7? I see there's a motion on here for that one.
No,
Okay.
no, just yep. And that's all we have for our consent agenda.
Any questions? We'll take a vote.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
And next on our agenda is action items. The employment administration personnel, Kevin Freeman Jr. A motion to approve the employment of Kevin Freeman Jr. as the assistant principal at Canal Winchester High School on a 2-year contract, administrative salary schedule, category 4, level 2, 101-033, beginning August the 1st, 2025. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. We're excited to welcome Kevin. Kevin comes to Canal Winchester High School from Westerville South High School, where his experience as a high school math teacher was complemented by meaningful leadership opportunities. He served in a principal observer role, allowing him to shadow school leaders and gain valuable insight into day-to-day school operations. In addition, he led building-wide equity initiatives focused on improving access, inclusion, and student success. These experiences have equipped Kevin with the skills and perspective necessary to contribute effectively to the administrative team at Canal Winchester High School. So we're excited to have Kevin here.
Thank you. Can we take a vote? Are there any questions? Okay. Can we take a vote?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Next on the agenda is the contract Fairfield County School Resource Officer. I make a motion for that.
Second.
All right, thank you. So this would be an annual contract. It would just continue on where we're at currently for, specifically, this specific contract is for our high school resource officer that's currently there.
Questions?
Does this contract also take into account the training requirements for the one that we have at the elementary school?
I believe so. So he goes through the SR training. Is that what you're, the one
Yeah,
that's
right.
annual?
Yes.
Yes, that is something that we cover. Yep.
Okay, okay.
MOU with that particular.
So that's a
position.
separate MOU,
Uh-huh.
that's not under this contract? Okay,
We have a separate MOU and we pay that position directly
Right.
an hourly rate.
right, okay, thank you.
Good question. Can we take a vote?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tally?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Okay, and next on the action items is the contract for truancy officer. Make a motion for superintendent to enter into a one-year contractual agreement with Franklin County Common Police Division, Domestic Relations and Juvenile Branch for truancy officer services for 2025-2026 school year for a maximum of $31,262. A second?
All right, thank you. So this is something that we've had now, I believe we've had the relationship for 5 or 6 years. It is a relationship with the Franklin County Common Pleas Court, and they provide us with a truancy officer. They split the cost, so she is with us full-time, pretty much throughout the school year. And she does, I believe, 1 day a week attend court when needed. But it's been a really great working relationship, and she handles all of our, attendance and concerns that we have there with that. So
Okay.
we're excited to continue it for another year.
Any questions? We take a vote?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mrs. Tally?
Abstain?
Okay, passes 3-2. The next one is the contract for private tuition. A motion for that.
Second.
All right, and this is for a private tuition to educate students who attend youth villages and Fairfield County Board of
DD.
DD,
Yeah. What is it? Developmental.
Developmental Disability. I was, yeah. Yep.
Yep.
And that'll allow us to place students there. So,
Okay. We take a vote.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Tally?
Yes.
Discussion items. There's a discussion item on here for state budget, is that?
yeah,
something-
so I included that. I believe that we were able to have good conversation already with Senator Reynolds here, so I'm not sure that that's needed, but wanted to provide the space in case, something came up that we weren't able to address and allow us the opportunity. But I do believe that we were able to share great thoughts with her, and, yeah. So I don't believe this is needed, but if anybody else would like to just have any other discussion, it is there in case.
I just wish that we could get to more of our constituents. I think there's the word town hall insinuates in-person town hall. It insinuates being able to have a community come together and talk about what we all want to discuss and what we all think we could use and what we need in our community. And that's the purpose of a town hall. And a teletown hall represents a totally separate thing. It is very controlled, and it prevents people from being able to respond to the questions, see who asked the questions, understand the questions, and it limits. If we only had 4 questions answered the last time in a 1-hour meeting, and this time we're going to have 2 people there in the same 1 hour, in another 1-hour meeting, I'm just concerned as to how many of our constituents will really be able to have that conversation and be able to open up and ask the questions that are really important to our community for this budget. And so that's the only thing I want to say about the budget is that I just would like to see our representatives come to our communities more often and talk to the community in a public forum that allows people to ask the questions that are really on their minds. Is there anything else anybody wants to add? Thank you for allowing that into the agenda. The next thing is closing items, adjournment, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
You take a vote.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
16.
Yes. 9:16. For as much